My mother, 65-year-old female, has been dating Dave, 60-year-old male, for 3 years. There have been red flags since the beginning, and it's gotten worse over time. My sister and I can't stand him, but my mom is extremely defensive about him and has made it very clear she will always take his side. Whenever I bring up concerns, she said it's a misunderstanding or a sense of humor, and we don't understand. Before my mom and Dave started dating, my mom was involved in mine and my sister's lives. She was also very involved in her grandchildren's lives, and was even planning on building a home on my sister's land so she could live closer and be involved with the grandkids. My mom currently lives 20 minutes away from my sister. I live out of state and about a 4-hour flight away from them. Dave is just an awful person. My sister and I have tried to be supportive and forgiving and happy for my mom, but it's getting impossible to ignore anymore. Here's a list of just some of the red flags. He always has an excuse about why my mother can't see the grandkids. I won't go into detail on this part, based on the sensitive nature of some of the reasons, but it's always been a huge concern to me. He is a loser and a mooch. Most of the time he has been with my mom, he has been unemployed. He lives in her house rent-free. He bullies her. 2 examples. On Christmas, my sister got my mom an Apple Watch, and he started making snide remarks insulting my mother's intelligence and ability to use the watch. My mom cooked her mother's recipe for potato latkes, and he was insulting the recipe and telling her she was doing it wrong. He is in a ton of debt, but the reasons don't make sense. Fake cancer diagnosis, ex-wife, business partner stole from him. One time when my mom was visiting me in Arizona, he told my mother he had infection 19 and told her she wasn't allowed to come home, the home that she owns and he lives in for free. She flew home and gave him an infection 19 test, and he tested negative. He literally lied to her, not sure if it was a power play or attention grab. I overheard him verbally harassing my mom at my niece's birthday party because he was mad my father, her ex-husband, was there. He tried to get my mom to marry him after 10 months of dating so he could get her health insurance. I told my mother I did not approve of that decision, and I'm pretty sure she secretly married him, but I'm not sure. My mother secretly moved him into her house after 6 months of dating and lied to us about it. Once he moved in, he made her get rid of all of her sentimental furniture and artwork, many of which were her late parents. My mother has never lied or hidden anything from us before. This is all new behavior for her. Everything came to a head this weekend. Friday, I flew in for my uncle's funeral. I only fly home once or twice a year. I was at my sister's house, and my mom texted us asking if we had plans for dinner. We told her to come over. We had just ordered family-style Mexican food and would be hanging out. My mom said to eat, and she would swing by later. 5 hours go by, and we don't hear from her. It's 9 p.m. Remember, my sister has little kids, so 9 p.m. is too late for guests to come over. I texted my mom and asked why she didn't come. She said she got busy with errands, but was on her way. I told her it was too late because the kids were getting ready for bed and having tantrums from being too tired. Yesterday, my mom came to my sister's house, and I asked her what errand was more important than having dinner with me, since I never see her. She then told us she went out to dinner with Dave and got gas. Then my sister and I explained why we don't like Dave and how we feel like my mom doesn't care about our relationships anymore. She doesn't even see her grandkids anymore. We feel like a low priority, and we are concerned about him being an unhealthy person. I was so hurt and angry that she blew me off for dinner and then tried to hide it, and then she had dinner with him instead. Today at my uncle's funeral, my mom pulled me aside and said she talked to Dave. She told him our concerns about him being controlling and pulling her away from us. She started crying and said that he is now refusing to come to my wedding in 2 weeks. I told her that his decision was just proving my and my sister's point more, and that it was really messed up for him to bail on the wedding and trip to Arizona. He had committed to a vacation house with my mother and her sisters. I understand him not liking me, but you would think he would want to be there for my mother to make the day special for her. She has been so excited for the wedding. My mother started yelling at me and told me it's all my fault. She said I'm judgmental and accused me of lying and making up stories about Dave. I'm honestly so hurt and have been crying all day. Although I'm relieved he won't be at the wedding to cause drama, I am deeply offended. And I think he is choosing not to come because he knows it will hurt my mom. She made it very clear this is my fault, and she is on his side. And now I feel like he will make her cut us out completely. I don't know what to do. I want my mom to be happy, but I can't support this relationship. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I know your mom raised you and you have much respect for her, so it's difficult for you to understand how she doesn't see the massive red flag hanging over that dude's head. You can't cut her out completely because that would just be leaving her at his mercy. A couple of things. 1. Does your mom have any siblings or older relatives that can talk to her? She may not value much of what you say, but a sibling or an older relative may get in there. 2. Do you or your sister have an eye on your mom's finances? If that guy is the snake that you believe him to be, he could be dipping. 3. You need to visit more than once or twice a year. Dude has unfettered access to your mom, and when you visit, you need to stay there so that you can get a feel for what is going on. Yes, it will suck. Do it anyway. Don't give up on your mom. Comment 2. It sounds like he's a malignant narcissist. I understand your family is hurting, but she's just not able to think clearly under that type of manipulation. She may also be defensive because she's getting older and is lonely. Kids all grown up out of the house, families and lives of their own. So she's probably clinging to him in hopes to not have to grow older all alone. If she's putting him ahead of everyone, distance yourself. Let her come to you. She will hopefully realize soon that losing her family isn't worth this man. I'm sorry that this is hurting you. It may be worth it to ask if she would be open to counseling with you and your sister. Something via Zoom, so that you can all attend and work it out. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around. Things have escalated beyond what I thought possible. After the funeral, my sister and I were reeling from the confrontation with Mom. We hoped she'd come to her senses, but instead, she doubled down. She announced she was moving across the country with Dave to start fresh. She sold her house, the one she was supposed to build on my sister's land, and didn't even tell us until the moving truck was outside. The move was a shock, but what came next was a gut punch. We found out Dave had convinced Mom to invest in some shady business deal. All her retirement savings gone. She called it an exciting opportunity, but we saw it for what it was, Dave's latest scam. My sister and I were livid, but Mom wouldn't hear it. She accused us of not wanting her to be happy. Then, the night before my wedding, Mom called, sobbing. Dave had left her, taking her car and whatever money was left. She was alone in a strange city with nothing. My sister and I were torn. We were angry, but it was our mom. We couldn't leave her stranded. I flew out the next morning, missing my own wedding rehearsal, to find her. It was a mess. Mom was a wreck, and I had to practically drag her back home. She kept saying how it was all her fault, how she should have listened. I wanted to scream, "I told you so." But seeing her so broken, I couldn't. Back home, my sister took her in. The wedding was bittersweet. Mom was there, but the joy was tainted by the betrayal and the financial ruin she was now in. Dave had manipulated her into marrying him after all. And with that, he had access to everything. The aftermath was a blur. Lawyers, annulments, and trying to salvage what little dignity Mom had left. She was a shell of the woman she used to be, and it was all because of Dave. I was angry, so angry, but I couldn't abandon her. She was still my mom. In the end, I forgave her. Not for her, but for me. I couldn't carry the weight of that resentment. It made me look weak, maybe even desperate, but I had to let it go. I had to move on. Thanks for reading. My boyfriend hides old hookup videos and cheats while I'm pregnant. So I send his scandalous secrets to everyone at his job and watch. His reputation crumble. I, 26-year-old female, have been with my boyfriend, 29-year-old male, for 2 years, and we're currently living together. Overall, I thought he was a great guy, and he never did anything to make me doubt him. He knew I was cheated on in the past and made sure to build trust with me. but now I feel so broken. So as the title said, I was using my boyfriend's laptop because mine broke down, and I found the tapes with multiple women. At first I thought he downloaded porn, so I clicked on one of them and realized it was him. I kind of froze at that moment, and the video continued on until I snapped back into reality and closed it. I know that the tapes were old because he looked younger, and they were filmed at his college dorm. I don't mind the fact that he made those tapes, but we had conversations about keeping things from old relationships. I told him very clearly that keeping nudes or intimacy tapes is not okay, and he agreed with me 100%, saying he would never keep anything of that nature. I thought we were good. I haven't confronted him because I don't know how to bring it up, and every time I look at him, I can see those frames in my head, and it made me feel so disgusted. I felt like the trust we had built is shattered, and I'm afraid to move on. I really don't know what I should do now. How do I move forward? Is this salvageable? Edit. I commented this, but maybe I should put it here. Just to clarify a few things. From the video I saw, I believe it was consensual, since the girl was the one setting up the angle. I did not go snooping to find it. He gave me his laptop to use, and I opened the camera rolls to some photos we recently took for editing. Turned out he did not connect it with his phone or whatever. I'm not used to Windows since I use Mac, and all I found was the videos, maybe 10 of them. This gave me major ick because it's not an old laptop, so I thought he transferred those videos to this laptop and deliberately kept them. Again, I don't know how Windows work, so I don't know if it will get transferred automatically. I had told him that if me wanting him to not keep things of that nature is something he doesn't want, he can step out and save us both time. He said he also thought keeping that was creepy. All in all, I just feel lied to. Edit 2. He did not agree to delete them. He claimed he felt it was creepy to keep those, and claimed he has never made such videos. So, I guess a double lie. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. LMFAO. Snooping aside, since everyone else wants to focus on that. You should just confront him on the matter. He is likely going to feed you a line of bullshit about forgetting about them. Remember, he deliberately moved those from his phone to his laptop. Even if it was a Mac, an iPhone, an iCloud, auto-synced photos. He moved them off photos into another folder. That's not something one just forgets about. You'd be wise to break up with him, or you're going to continue dating him with a seed of doubt, planted due to his lying. Comment 2. You could have played innocent and deleted them. Then, if he ever asks you about it, say that one day when you used his computer, you found them. Figured he must have forgotten to delete them. Since he promised to get rid of them, you did it for him and didn't think it was a big deal. If he argues and gets upset, then, he lied to you and didn't forget. If you just ask, he's going to lie anyway. So you either fight because your boundaries were violated, or you live with it and learn to move on. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around after my last post. Things have gone from bad to worse. After I found those tapes on my boyfriend's laptop, I decided to confront him. I was shaking, but I had to know why he kept them. He looked me straight in the eyes and said he forgot they were there, that it was a mistake. He promised to delete them right away. I wanted to believe him, so I did. But that was my first mistake. A week later, my best friend told me she saw my boyfriend at a bar, cozying up with some girl. I didn't want to believe it. Not him, not after everything. I confronted him again and he denied it. Said my friend must have seen someone who looked like him. I wanted to trust him, so I let it slide. But inside, I was boiling with doubt. Then, my sister's wedding came around. It was supposed to be a happy day, but it turned into a nightmare. My boyfriend got drunk, really drunk. He started flirting with one of the bridesmaids, and I saw it all. It was like a slap in the face. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out and he followed me, begging for forgiveness. He said he didn't know what got into him, that he loved me and meant nothing. I was so angry, but when he started crying, I caved. I told him we'd talk about it when he was sober. That was my second mistake. The next day, he was all apologies, buying me flowers, cooking dinner. He was trying so hard, and I wanted to move past it all. So I forgave him. I thought maybe this was just a rough patch and we could get through it. But I was lying to myself. Things seemed okay for a while, until I got a message from an unknown number. It was a video. My heart sank as I watched it. It was my boyfriend with another woman, and it was recent. I couldn't breathe. I showed him the video, and he had no excuses this time. He just stood there, silent. I should have left him then, but I didn't. I told him we needed a break instead. I needed time to think, but deep down, I was just too scared to be alone. During our break, I found out I was pregnant. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know what to do. I told my boyfriend, and he was over the moon. He said this was a sign for us to start fresh, that we were meant to be a family. I wanted to believe that this baby could make everything right. So I took him back. That was my biggest mistake. We started planning for the baby, and things were looking up. But then I got another message. It was from the same unknown number, saying my boyfriend was still seeing the woman from the video. I didn't want to believe it, but there were pictures, dates, times. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I confronted him, and this time he couldn't deny it. He said he was trying to end it with her, but she was threatening to tell me if he did. He begged me to understand, to give him another chance for our baby's sake. I was torn. I didn't know what was right or wrong anymore. I decided to meet with the other woman. She told me everything. How he had promised her he would leave me, how he said he didn't love me anymore. It was like a knife through my heart, but she also said she was done with him, that she didn't want to be the other woman anymore. I should have walked away from him then, but I didn't. I went back to him and I told him it was over between him and her. I said we could try to work things out, but only if he was honest with me from now on. He agreed, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we could get past this. But I was wrong. I found out he had been lying to me about everything. The trust was gone, and I couldn't see a way back for us. I should have left him the first time I found those tapes. Now I'm stuck in a mess, and I don't know how to get out of it. I made the wrong choice, and I didn't even know it. Thanks for reading. My parents disrespected my wife for years. But when they showed up uninvited to our home, I showed them the door and changed the locks. My wife and I are in our 40s and have been married for 20 years. We have one early teenage son. We recently moved back to my hometown, about 2 miles from my parents. My wife has basically tolerated their behavior for years. They just seem not to like her. They interrupt when she speaks, argue about small things she says, make comments about her under their breath, and manipulate to see their grandson. I've admittedly done a horrible job at standing up for her and confronting them. I put my head in the sand, and that bad strategy is coming back to bite me now that we live nearby. Although we are going to move this year. Last Thanksgiving, my mom told my wife not to bother making food because nobody in her family likes what she makes, insinuating that my wife is not part of the family. My wife then did not come to any holidays. My mom left on a 2-month vacation without resolving it, and now does nothing more but deflect and excuse her behavior. Instead of apologizing, she will send my wife occasional texts saying, "We need to talk," and then she'll get mad when my wife doesn't respond. At the same time, I realize how unhappy my wife was and how I actually treat her in some of the same ways because of what was modeled for me. We were near divorce until I thankfully recognized this with the help of a therapist. I've changed a ton in a year and have done the hard work of reconciling with my wife, who has been very forgiving and gracious. Don't roast me too much for having a blind spot for 20 years. She tried to tell me over and over again, and I just never understood. I take full responsibility, but there are other deep factors like trauma response from chronic abuse, not at the hand of my parents, etc. But my parents still treat her the same and can't see it. They just think she is too sensitive and the only person who has ever complained about the way we treat them, and that this is some mutual conflict that they should both apologize for. My mom even pulled out the old Bible says to forgive and forget chestnut last week. My mom asks to see our son every day via text and wants me to spend time with her and my dad like we used to, as if nothing is wrong. I've tried confronting them and explaining the situation many times, but I have serious doubts about their desire or capacity to change. My mom last time was just like, well, I saw a counselor once who told me to text her, and she's the one that's not texting me back. I could easily explain to my mom what she's doing wrong and give her the exact script and a plan to actually apologize and repair. But that seems inauthentic and won't lead to lasting change. It's not my job to parent her, but we can't go on like this. I'm basically avoiding and ignoring them until I figure out what our relationship needs to look like. But I know that's not super mature or helpful. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. What consequences are you making for them? They're not going to stop if you just keep showing up to family events like nothing is wrong, keep bringing your kid around them, and so forth. You need to actually draw a line in the sand. Do not engage with them unless they modify their behavior. It's that simple. If they say she's too sensitive or whatever, simply say, I don't care about what your excuse is. We don't like the behavior, and we, including our child, will not be around it until there is improvement. Do they seem to make some changes? Okay, fine, go to a family event. The minute one of them does something rude, leave. Don't go back again. You can't keep subjecting your wife to this. And it's really bad role modeling to put your kid around. They shouldn't see this behavior and think it's okay. No negotiations. They watch their behavior or they don't have a relationship with your family. Period. Comment 2. You can't make people change. They are doing what they think is normal. What you have been doing and thought was normal for 40 years, they've been doing for 60 or 70. Just like you couldn't understand for 20 years, in exactly the same way they can't. The difference is they don't care and they don't want to avoid losing your wife, so they have no incentive to care. Y'all probably even have the same reasons and traumas that lead to this kind of behavior. That's why it's called generational trauma. It gets passed on from generation to generation, almost completely unchanged. You can't make the switch flip in their heads. You can only accept that this is what they think normal and good and right is, and then decide what to do with that information. Why did you move back to your parents' backyard when you knew they treated your wife like this? Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for an update. So, the other day, my mom decided to throw a surprise party for my dad's birthday. She invited the whole family, including my wife, acting like everything was peachy. My wife, bless her, agreed to go for my sake, but I could tell she was dreading it. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife when we walked in. I could see my wife forcing a smile, trying to be civil. But my parents? They acted like she was invisible. Halfway through the party, my dad, probably trying to lighten the mood, made a joke about my wife's cooking. That's when she lost it. She didn't make a scene, but she told them right there that she was done trying to fit into their mold and walked out. I was frozen, torn between running after her and confronting my parents. I chose to stay, and that's a decision I'm still wrestling with. The next day, my mom calls, crying, saying she doesn't understand why my wife is so upset. I tried to explain again, but it was like talking to a brick wall. She ended the call with a, "We'll see who's really family." And that's when I knew things were about to get ugly. Turns out, my mom had been talking to our son behind our backs, filling his head with how his mom was tearing the family apart. He confronted us, confused and angry, and it took every ounce of patience to explain the situation without bad-mouthing his grandparents. It was a mess, and it's put a strain on our relationship with him. And if that wasn't enough, my dad, who's been mostly quiet through all this, decided to take matters into his own hands. He showed up at our house unannounced, demanding to talk to my wife. She refused, and I had to physically stand between them as he shouted about respect and family. It was the first time I'd ever stood up to him like that, and it shook me to my core. The aftermath has been, well, I'll just get into it. My wife and I are trying to patch things up with our son, who's caught in the middle of this mess. My parents are now giving us the silent treatment, which is almost a relief, but I know it's not over. They've made it clear they think they've done nothing wrong and are waiting for an apology that will never come. As for me, I'm left wondering how I could have been so blind. I've been manipulated by my own parents, thinking we could somehow fix things, but it's clear now that they're not interested in changing. They want control, not a healthy relationship. and I'm just now seeing the full extent of it. Thanks for reading, and if you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.